Well, for a look behind those jobs numbers, I'm joined by Diane Lim. She's a principal economist at the Conference Board here in Washington. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you.
So, in your view, what were the biggest takeaways from this report?
Well, it was a pretty good news report. We added 200,000 jobs in January, and the unemployment rate remained at a very low 4.1%. We're starting to see wage growth too, so that's a further sign that the labor market is really tightening. Demand is really picking up for labor.
So with this tighter labor market and this historically low unemployment rate, how much power then is now in the hands of job seekers versus the employers?
Well, it's, when the market turns around, when there's more demand relative to supply, that obviously means there's more in the power of an employee, the worker. It's not uniform, though, across the economy. So you have to keep in mind that all these employment statistics are averages. So it can hide a lot of disparities across the economy, like across industries, across different types of occupations and different demographic categories. So it's really difficult to characterize the entire labor market by just the summary statistics. So that's what I would caution.
So in terms of some of the underlying issues that we should also be paying attention to in this jobs report, what are the standouts?
Well, the standouts are that economists are trying to figure out what the new normal is in this new fully recovered or close to fully recovered economy. Because you can't just sort of expect that the economy will look at in this business cycle the way it came out, the way it started the last recession. So we're seeing shifts in the economy away from goods producing industries and towards service providing industries, because consumers are just demanding fewer things these days and more experiences. So that's all reflected in the jobs numbers. We see that goods producing jobs, like in manufacturing, have been on the decline over the long term. And the recovery that we see, the good performance of manufacturing jobs most recently, is really more part of a cyclical story, the business cycle story, rather than a long-term trend. Over the long term, we're going to continue to see the jobs in the restaurant industry, the health services industry, education growing, and jobs in goods producing jobs shrinking. And that's because a lot of these jobs that were previously done here in the U.S., some of them have been offshored. They've moved to other countries where labor's cheaper, or they've been automated. Right. There's been a lot of change in the way things are produced these days.
So then, given that, then, what do we know about the quality of the jobs that are now being created?
Well, I think that we don't know a lot of detail about the quality of jobs because economists tend to look at very aggregate data. One trend in the economy in terms of the world of work has been a rise in the so-called gig economy, where many more workers these days they're not in traditional employer-employee relationships, but they're independent contractors, or they're just on contracts. And those jobs, the unfortunate thing about those jobs is that they typically don't come with benefits. So employment is not necessarily synonymous with having, good wages and good benefits these days. And so right. I think that's one trend that we have to be mindful of. The employment data don't pick up the broader aspects of compensation. So we don't know a lot about the benefits that are offered to independent workers because they're not considered employees.
Right. Mm-hmm. And apart from part-time workers, we also know there's this segment of the population of these discouraged workers who aren't even entering the labor market. Can we expect any sort of changes on that front, given some of the momentum that we're seeing?
A problem, an aspect of the labor market that still is not fully apparent is how many of the people that dropped out of the labor force during the Great Recession are going to come back. So economists are struggling to figure out, is this full employment? The 4.1% unemployment rate is very low, but the labor force participation rate has dropped a lot since the recession, and it doesn't seem to be budging very much lately. So it's at a, very low 62 to 63% of the working age population are actually in the labor force, either working or looking for work.
Right.
And the question is, why hasn't that come back up? Some of that is inevitable because the population is on the older side now. It's aging.
Right. So certainly a lot of factors to consider
Yeah.
other than just that headline number. Thank you so much. We'll have to leave it there. Diane Lim from the Conference Board.
Thank you.